everybody, and welcome to We Say Things, episode 3, currently sponsored by nobody. Although, syndereN, we do have a sponsor coming. It just hasn't been completely finalized yet. So wait for next week or the week after. I'm not sure when. As always, this podcast is available officially on all major podcast apps, Apple, Google, Spotify. For the people out there that continually ask, why is this not on Spotify? If you watch the first 30 seconds of any episode, you will know that it is in fact on Spotify. You just need to search for it. As always, if you go to sunsfan.gg/podcast, you can find the audio there as well. Be sure to give us great ratings on things like the Apple Podcast. I think it might be the only one you can do that. There's a nice 5-star rating by our friend Casey with a bunch of E's and Y's. You want to read that for us, syndereN?
Sure, I will. Nice podcast. Great Dota 2 content, related content, which I am looking for. SUNSfan and syndereN always have been great together, and a set and structured podcast setting fits them well. I like the topics and banter and anywhere else they end up.
He also went on to say that he actually hates your guts, but I actually cut that part out. But thank you, Casey, for the 5-star review.
I just want to say, I want to make this clear really quickly. This was a totally random review that we picked out of thousands of 5-star reviews. This was just one that stood out to us by Casey. So
that's correct.
Casey. And
so
thank you all the other thousands that gave us 5 stars.
It does help a lot to do that, by the way. If you guys want a little shout out every now and then we'll try to pick out the ones that we can from time to time. But as always, just to remind everybody, we are on a set schedule, which almost got fucked up today because of syndereN, but he ended up feeling better. It's gonna
miraculously got healthy.
Thank you. Did you drink water or something? What happened?
I do that all the time, and then I wash my hands.
Okay,
no,
good.
Wait, that wasn't in the recording, so now that's going to make no sense to anyone who's listening.
Basically, for people that don't understand what we're saying, there will be a topic at another episode about washing hands, because I feel like talking about it. Continue.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah, I was feeling sick. I just came back from France. We were there for 3 days. My girlfriend was at a cosplay event, and I was helping out. And then I got sick after I got home, so I guess I carried something with me. It got pretty bad last night, and then I woke up in the middle of the night, felt pretty bad. So I was like, Shannon, I don't know if I'm going to be able to record. And then miraculously, I got a lot better over a couple of hours. So, sleep can do wondrous things for you.
You could have a tapeworm. Be careful.
I could. I did eat tartare, but tapeworms are only from raw fish, right?
You ate tartare, and you're wondering why you're sick. Good. Anyway, to finish our intro, syndereN, the episode is live on Twitch every week, every Tuesday, 2 a.m. PST, 11 a.m. CEST. Of course, uploaded to YouTube and podcast stations after that. For updates, like, for instance, for people that didn't know that this might have been canceled originally or postponed, you can find all the updates on Twitter, SUNSfan TV and syndereN Dota. And one last thing, I truly apologize to all the audio listeners out there, because I kind of messed up on the first 2 episodes and uploaded as a .wave, which means the episodes were like a gig, syndereN. They will be in MP3 format from now on, so if you have bandwidth limits, fear not. So
you gotta give us a little bit of leeway in the start. Of course, as it is with SUNSfan, once he learns things, he never makes mistakes later. So it will be. You can trust him to do it properly from now on.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Good.
If you want. We were talking about this last week, how I wanted to make, we were kind of joking, a weekly rant. And this is not weekly. I just got really angry last night, and I wrote this into the outline of what I want to rant about this week. If you don't mind, syndereN, can I just take a couple minutes?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Of course.
I know we talked about this in either episode 1 or 2, and oh my God, the auto chess item system is so fucking horrible. It makes me want to do some very, very bad things. Going up a game.
How about not playing it? Is that what it makes you want to do? Sorry, it's your rant.
Can I continue the rant? This is not how the weekly rant is supposed to go.
Okay.
So you're going up against a pretty good lineup, but I have an amazing one, like God lineup. I have everything that I actually need, and I get destroyed. I'm wondering what the hell's going on. I look over, it's a Troll 2 with double Mask of Madness, Daedalus, and of course I haven't gotten items the entire game. He crushes me, and I die as a result. What is the point of random items? Can I ask you that, syndereN? I genuinely don't understand. It doesn't incentivize financial purchases in any way, which we'll get to in a minute. It only frustrates people. And honestly, if items in general were not even in the game would still actually be fun to play, I think. So in the 30 seconds that I was raging, I thought about ways to fix this. And believe me, I didn't think more than 30 seconds on this. Is top of my head fixes to the item system in fucking auto chess. Number one, give a guaranteed chance for items to spawn from creeps. Okay, give whatever it is, you can make it as balanced as you want, whatever. That's number one. Number two, get rid of this fucking flying items. Like, Jesus Christ, get rid of that. That's the stupidest thing ever. Like, I played a game yesterday where I'm like third place. I have no items. And I look over, the guy who is crushing everybody, oh, whoop-de-doo, he kills somebody, and 3 items come to him and no one else. Like, how is that a thing? And number 3, I think this would be really cool. Be able to sell your items for half price and buy something in replace. That actually, like, you get a Mask of Madness when you're playing as a mage, right? It's useless. You put it on Crystal Maiden or something. Like, it's of no use. You can...
Correct.
You lose a little bit of value by selling it, but you can cater towards your specific lineup a little bit better. I think those are just the top of my head. What are your thoughts on the item system?
I think the biggest strength of this item system, the way it works right now, is that it helps bad people have success, so they want to play more. Because if you're not very good at the game, you can still win because of luck. And the more of the luck you remove, the more of a skill-based game it gets, and maybe that will, in the end, reduce the amount of plays that it gets. Because I think one of the strengths of auto chess is that anybody can just sit down and play a game, and you can be a beginner and still beat someone who's decent if you're lucky enough. That doesn't mean you win 50% of the time, but you win some of the time. Instead of, in Dota, if you're a new player and you don't have matchmaking in auto chess, so you could be playing against very experienced players every time you queue, you just get crushed if it's a skill game, and maybe that would disincentivize people from playing. That's the only logic I can think about of this. I think it's terrible game design. I don't think it's very... it doesn't cater to me at all. I hate RNG elements like this that are game deciding. It's okay if there's a bit, like Dota, for example, has bashes or whatever that can, have it make a difference. But to me, auto chess is way too RNG. And I could understand why other people think it's fun, I made this analogy the other time we talked about it with comparing it to like PUBG or Fortnite. You queue in, you find a game instantly. Oh, I got bad spawns. Oh, well, I can just queue for another game, right? Like, I was terrible. I played some Fortnite a while back. I was not good at that game, but I still played it a good amount, because sometimes you get those good spawns and you're on a roll. And even though I was bad, I could maybe beat better players by being lucky, and maybe that was fun. Is it good design? Personally, I don't think so. It's good casual design, maybe. But if you're from the perspective that you want this game to be competitive and actually skill-based, I think it's terrible. So, what are you aiming for? That's the question.
Yeah, and the rant is now at an end, by the way. But I do have one more thing to say, kind of related. I was reading this on Reddit, and after I read it, no pun intended, I was shocked that I hadn't realized this before, because it's definitely true. The thing that frustrated me, other than the items, the most about the game was just a small little mechanic where the courier has a cast range, right? Which is very annoying. I'm like, why does it not? You have to move the courier to be able to like put pieces on the board. It doesn't have a global range, right? Which I'm like,
I didn't know that.
Like, what is the reason for that other than making me very angry all the time? Because sometimes you can't get the pieces out on time because you have to move your fucking courier. I'm saying fucking a lot. I apologize, but it's very frustrating. And then I read something and it all clicked. Do you know what it is? What is the reason, you think?
That the courier has a cast range?
Yes.
Probably a limitation of the engine. That
No,
if you give
of
it
course
global
not.
cast range, something
Absolutely
bugs
not.
out in custom games or something.
No. Better reason. Okay. Come on. Give your second guess. You can do better than that. Think like the devs. Let's go. What do they care about the most, syndereN?
RNG. Does it have random cast range every game?
No. Okay, never mind. You're failing horribly. So the reason... the reason is money. If you don't move your courier around all the time, you won't want to make it pretty. Think about that for a second. Think about that. That's actually unbelievable. It never popped in my head, but it is 100% true. That's how they make their money, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're smart. What can you say?
It is smart. Yeah.
Takes a genius to develop this item system. You got to sit down, be like, okay, here's a flowchart of all the things we could do. What's the worst path we could take? And then you do that. But at least you mapped out your options, right?
Yeah, that's true. All right. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about Dota 2. And before we get started, I know some people we're talking about. There was some feedback, I guess you could say, about how we didn't talk enough about Dota last episode. I think it's just going to be week to week. It's obviously the game we'll talk about the most, but I don't want this to be a Dota 2 podcast strictly at all. That is not something I
When
want.
Dota has a lot of good stuff to talk about, we'll talk about it. If Dota doesn't have a lot of good stuff to talk about, we'll talk about washing our hands.
That's right. And this week we have a lot to talk about, syndereN. So
yeah, we do.
First and foremost, let's start in kind of chronological order here. The new DPC season has been announced, so 5 majors, 5 minors. Slax's comment on Reddit actually surprised me that he wrote this publicly, but here it goes. I'm going to quote it. And I'm going to ignore all the terrible spelling mistakes, which there are more than like 5 or 6 in this short amount of time. Hopefully there is some kind of follow-up post with this. From what I can tell, the last year wasn't very profitable or, well, incentivized for tournament organizers. Was really hoping for some new ideas to shake up the competitive scene. He spelled that so bad, I had to mention it. For tourney orgs in the new season. Valve might be a little surprised when they go to when they go to review the submissions for next year's majors and minors and they see they have no emails. syndereN, what is your response to this?
Like from the perspective, what am I right now?
Any perspective.
Am I a player? Am I an organizer?
Whatever you want to talk about. It's your choice.
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, I think this amount of tournaments is good. I think having 5 minors and 5 majors is totally fine, but I would like to see a change in the way things are structured, because what was supposedly going to be the case this year with the minor system was that the incentive was that it would help grow the tier 2 scene. I don't think it has been successful in that. Personally, I think one of the primary problems is, obviously I'm in a really stacked region, so that makes it harder. But you have the majors, and since nobody gets auto-invited to majors, not even the previous champions, the European qualifiers are a bloodbath every time, because you have like 3 of the best 6 or 8 teams in the world in the same qualifier every time. That makes it pretty tough. That doesn't mean they can't have an off tournament, but generally they will qualify, right? So what's left in Europe? Then there's the minor qualifier, where Europe gets 1 slot. Maybe, has there been 1 minor with 2 Europe slots? Maybe there's been 1, I'm not sure. But generally, there's 1 slot, and then you're fighting over that 1 slot, basically. So the entire tier 2 scene that this is meant to grow, remember? Out of the entire scene that's meant to grow, 1 team will make it to a minor, where they will play against other tier 2 teams from other regions. But does that grow the tier 2 scene? The problem here is that if you play these qualifiers and you don't get first place, you get nothing. You got nothing out of it. Sure, you got some experience, but you got nothing in return. You got no money. You got almost no promotion. So what's in this for sponsors? Like, what is worth getting into Dota 2 over as a sponsor, unless you have a major team that is like guaranteed to go to the majors? If you compare Dota 2 to Csgo, the amount of sponsored teams, I think, is pretty clear indication of the monetization of Dota 2 probably needing a push in a direction that incentivizes orgs to get involved. And I know this is I'm talking a lot, but let me finish this.
Please do.
I think
can you
approach...
do it a little bit farther away from your mic, perhaps?
Sure. Okay. Valve's approach to Dota 2 has always been very player-centric when it comes to the competitive scene. Like, they're taking care of the players first and foremost over the orgs, which, if you're a player, you should think that's great. But at the same time, in some situations, you've got to wonder if that is actually in the player's own interest that the thing is run like this. Because if the end result is that less sponsors are invested into it, the only players that are truly benefiting from this very player-focused approach are the players that are successful anyway. Because the ones that aren't get nothing out of it. They don't even have a contract. They don't even get paid a wage. And because of how extremely competitive the scene is and how few opportunities you get to go somewhere, and how little incentive there now is with these DPC systems to run secondary tournaments, online tournaments for 50k or 100k, like we used to have in the past. Can't monetize the workshop anymore. We haven't been able to do that for a couple of years by now. It's just hard to, conjure up this money that doesn't exist. These monies.
These monies.
It isn't there. And I'm not sure if the way things are run right now is what Valve were anticipating or expecting, or if they're just a bit disconnected from what is actually going on from the community standpoint, like from the players and from organizations. Because it doesn't, you compare, you just look at Dota, you look at CSGO, and it should be very obvious that there's very clear differences in how much money is in the scene, how it's organized, and,
right.
the way, basically the connection between the amount of money and the way the tournament systems function. It's just different. So what I am hoping for the next season is that even if Valve do 5 minors, 5 majors again, which I think is fine, this number of tournaments, I hope they implement some of the things they have working in CSGO, where clearly there's a lot more tier 2 stuff going on.
See, that's the thing that's interesting, right? It feels like the teams working on these games, well, not the playing teams, but like the team programming teams or whatever you want to call them, the devs, Counter-Strike and Dota, it feels like they literally never, it feels like they're two different companies, right? That's the thing that I don't understand. And that's the weird part.
One of the differences, right? So correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think you follow CSGO relatively closely, at least. Maybe more than I do. Maybe you still follow it more than I do. But anyway, minors and majors in CSGO, it's like this stretch. The minor is a direct qualification to the major, and they're kind of like in succession to each other. And they have more than these 8 teams. I think that is one of the problems with the minors, is that they're always 8 teams, because the organizers that are hosting them, they can't afford to have 16 teams. It's too expensive. It's a bad return investment. So they're always going to do 8 teams to try to make a profit. That's just natural. But the problem with that is, again, representation for the players. Like, there's so few teams that get to play. In CSGO, I have to look this up right now. Let me just find a minor. What was the last minor?
Great question, syndereN.
I'm going to find this. Hang on. Give me a sec.
I'm an old school CSer, so I haven't paid as much attention.
On top of all of this, like disregarding the minor, major, whatever, I think CSGO also has less of them than Dota does. And what that does is it makes more space for other tournaments to be organized throughout the year. There's a lot of these IEM tournaments, for example. ESL is running stuff. The Blast Pro series. Like, where's this money coming from? Like, why can they host these 2-digit... I don't know how many tournaments are throughout the year that are not part of a circuit from Valve or whatever, but it's a good amount compared to Dota. Like, there's multiple great lands, good production, good prize money. And I think part of the reason, or a really big part of the reason, is that the system is, it's self-sustainable. And in Dota, it doesn't seem like the system is very self-sustainable, because 80% of the entire year is one tournament in August.
And that's a whole,
trumps
that's another
everything. And diminishes everything else. And it doesn't seem like, it's easy to say hindsight is 2020, right? But you just look at what's going on right now, and you have to feel like, okay, this could be better. Like, this could be so much better. Not only because we aren't maybe satisfied within our game, it's because we can literally look to another Valve title in the other room that is doing clearly better in terms of its competitive scene and the money.
Let's be fair. It's not just
something you can do about it.
It's not just another room. They're a floor up from the Dota team.
Yeah.
I just got to take the elevator then. That's a little difficult. Well, I think the one thing that Valve has shown recently, at least by recently I mean the last year or two, is they're more receptive to the community when community gets loud about something, right?
Oh, for sure.
The way that I can look at this whole situation from the tournament organizer spot is these tournaments, there is no way that they are making money. I would be absolutely shocked if any major made money this year. I would be shocked. Of course, this isn't just my personal experience with Captain's Draft, which was a couple years or whenever that was. I guess it was a year and a half ago, because it's a little bit of a different scenario. It's a minor, so it's not, and it was a lower budget probably than a lot of the other minors. I still lost a lot of money. Of course, a lot of that has to do with the time it was done, which was early January, which is the worst. But just based on my talks with other tournament organizers in the last couple years, sponsors are not great for Dota. That's the problem. Like the way that Valve is kind of creating this DPC system, which in theory we all liked it when it was first introduced. The problem is this hands-off approach doesn't work when sponsors don't want to sponsor Dota. That's the problem. CS is very sponsorable. So, and of course their system is a little bit different as well. If, let's say it was flip-flopped and this system was in place right now and sponsors actually wanted to sponsor Dota, they wanted to put money, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd have no problem. Tournaments would be making money. Tier 2 teams, Tier 3 teams would be making money. It's just, it's not a game that is attractive.
So what do you think is the solution, or a step in the right direction? Like, what do you think we should do?
This is a whole nother conversation, because we talked about this a bit last week. I think TI needs to be completely restructured and spread that money around a little bit more evenly.
So you think like the community should fund the tournament circuit and not the sponsors, because that's basically what it is, right? Like if you take TI's money and you place it throughout the year, it's the community paying for our competitive scene and not the sponsors.
In a way, yeah. No, that makes to fix the sponsor thing. I don't think you can anymore. I think it's long gone. Dota is very old at this point. It's past its prime, I guess you could say. It's considered the stepchild of League of Legends. Like that's a more attractive game for sponsors. It's unfortunate, but it's just the reality of the situation. It's a very hard game to get into. I guess you could put in not only just a tutorial system or something like that, but also maybe cater the game to a little bit more casuals. Maybe spending a little bit more time, making like things like turbo mode a little bit more. You can balance that as its own mode. Like I was actually thinking ability draft would be really cool to just balance. Because right now you have, this is a whole nother discussion as well, but just as a random example, because I feel like ability draft has a lot of potential. It just hasn't been touched since it's been released. But think of, if you go to play ability draft, one of the biggest issues is you end up with a really, like the last 2 times I played ability draft, I end up with Clinks, right, as the hero. Just as a hero, nice. Stat-wise, is garbage, right? That's so you could, in theory, rebalance the whole mode to have melee, range, sure, but they have the same stats. Like all the range heroes have the same stats, the same attack animation, everything's the same. And then the game becomes actually so much more fun to think about, like theoretically, what skills are really good together, what synergizes, what you don't have to worry about these horrible imbalances that kind of exist right now, right? So that's just like one minor example of things they could do to help cater the game to a little bit more casual crowd.
Do you think Dota's like do you think that's what Dota how do I explain this? If you're a casual player, will you ever get into this game? Like, and by casual, I don't mean you're not trying to go pro. Like, it's not the comparison I'm looking for. It's more, you're a guy who's like, okay, I'm looking for a new game to play. I have a couple of hours every weekend when I'm off work or in the evening when I come home and I've taken care of everything. I'm going to sit down and chill, and I'm looking for a new game to play. What are the odds that you get those players to be interested in the game? Just by nature of how the game works. Like, do you think making turbo mode easier, making ability draft more accessible or whatever, just the core game with 2 billion spells and items that are intertwined in such a complex way, do you think that type of player will enjoy this game? Like, if you really try to cater to them, do you think they're going to play it?
I mean, not everyone. I mean, here's the thing, right? The thing you're going up against that is the biggest struggle is the fact that the game has been out for so long. It's not like
it keeps getting more complex and added things, right?
True.
Dota 10 years ago was easier to get into because there were less heroes, less items, and more simplicity.
True.
So
I mean, that's definitely true. But at the end of the day, how many games have the model in place where you can literally play every part of the game right away if you want without paying $1? And I feel like, and Valve obviously is kind of have this no advertisement policy where they just don't, put their footprint in that regard. It actually would have helped a lot. I mean, there's a lot of misconception about what free-to-play means. Like, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
Like, free-to-play in Dota is not the same as free-to-play in League. Like, you can argue which one's better, which one's more profitable, all that stuff. It doesn't matter. The way that Dota does that specific part is better for the player base. Like, it has to be more attractive. It's just not... People, literally, there's a segment of people that actually do not realize there's a difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But what you should maybe also consider, again, if you're a casual player, this can be, there's these systems in place in different games where, log back in every day and you get a daily reward, this kind of thing. Dota doesn't have that, obviously.
Dota Plus.
I think for players that play, let's say you play 10 hours a week, 15, 20 hours a week. There is some incentive in League's model that it feels like you are progressing towards something. You don't have all the heroes, but you put in some time and then, oh, nice, over the last 2 weeks, I played some games and now I can get to play this new champion that I was looking forward to trying to play. It's like you're unlocking stuff in the game. It's a different model. I personally love the fact that all heroes are available, but it can also be super overwhelming.
That's true.
Like when you come into the game, there's 100 whatever characters and you don't know any of them. Even if you start playing a game like League, let's just say you have access to 20 champions or whatever, it's still a lot of information in the start to process. Dota is just, it's kind of a damn it if you do, damn it if you don't situation where it's like, oh, it's awesome, you have access to everything, that's so cool, but at the same time, wow, I have no idea what to do with all this information.
Do they still have this in the game? where
limited mode.
Remember when you make a new account, you can only play like 10 heroes for a certain amount of games or something like that? Is that still in the game?
Dota?
Yeah, they definitely did that for a while. But
I
it wasn't
don't
like this
remember.
whole, this is cool, you get to unlock. It wasn't like that. It was just like you play this amount of games and you unlock everything.
I would imagine if it's not in place anymore, it's probably because they tested it and they saw no difference in the data. And actually, I saw something interesting because I randomly got to see this. I think I found it through a Reddit comment. Someone was talking about Warframe's design. I've never played this game. I just watched the video and found it pretty interesting. That they had really tried to implement systems to make it more appealing to new players to come in. And with the things that they implemented and tried to catch the attention of these casual players, they saw almost zero difference. Because at the end of the day, the players that this game captured were people that were willing to invest lots of hours. And basically what they said is, people are smart. They go to your game and they can very quickly tell. He compared it to a Netflix series or whatever. He's like, how many hours will this game take me? How much time do I need to invest into it to get a good return? And it's like, people can very clearly see a difference between a 6-episode series and a 20-episode series. They know that the 20-episode series takes longer. And when they got into this Warframe game, it was still very clear that, okay, this is an amount of commitment I'm not willing to do for a game. So again, if you go back to Dota, yes, you can try to, I don't want to say dumb it down, you can try to simplify it a bit and make it easier to access in the start. But again, will you get different players or not? Or is the goal really what you should be focusing on, in my opinion, which I think is the biggest strength of the game, is its extreme history. Don't lose the players you have.
Right.
I think that should be the goal of the game. And get back the old players that left. Well, you can see the player numbers, right? They've been declining. It's no secret when you go and check the history of the game. It was, I think, at its absolute biggest around TI3, I believe. 2013 had the most players. So you got to imagine, okay, is it because the game isn't getting enough new content? Is it because there's not enough replayability? Like, what if you introduced something in the game that made it way more appealing for people to come back and play every day? I think that's part of the reason people love the hell out of the Battle Pass for TI, because there's something to do. There's daily quests.
It's a grind.
There's a progression system.
They like to grind.
There's a progression system. Yes, there's a
We
progression
talked about
system.
this in the Artifact segment, where
And
I'm
Artifact
personally
doesn't have
not
that
like
either.
that, right? Yeah.
I think progression systems are almost necessary to retain player attention, unless the game is just that good. And I'm not saying Dota is a bad game. Dota is an amazing game, and I've played it countless hours.
Oh, we also forgot to mention one aspect from the league side of things, right? Where you're actually investing all of this time into unlocking these characters, right? Which seems more fun for some people. I'm not one of those people, but regardless, you spend that much time unlocking these characters, you're less incentivized to ever even try another similar game, because you've already, like, the time you've put into that game that you've invested, you can't get that back, and it feels like a waste to just throw away those characters and go play another game.
I've heard that story told quite a few times. I've read about that from league perspective, league player perspective, for sure. Because it feels like you've earned something, you've grown in the game. And so I don't think Dota should copy that model.
It feels, I'm not saying that either. I don't think so either. But anyway, let's move on to the next segment. So, Cap,
we could talk about this forever.
I know.
Really complete. And Valve are smart. It's not. I don't think it's very easy to do this, but like I have this feeling you could definitely do something.
When we talk about things like this, it feels like sometimes one person's leaning. It's never a black and white situation, right? There's so many different factors that we're not even mentioning right now. Cap. So Cap tweeted.
Capitalist
tweeted. I can't remember if this is the actual quote. I think so. I don't know how anybody continues to be a fan of any NA teams outside of EG. Fan of players for sure, but the way NA teams constantly reshuffle, like, how am I supposed to put my faith in you guys when you clearly don't even believe in each other? And PPD's response to this, there's a huge amount of response, by the way. This is just one I picked out. Pretty long Reddit comment, which I'm going to horribly summarize here. Essentially, PPD is saying that NA's problems stem from he attributed a lot of the problems to the lack of PC LAN cafe culture in the US, which is interesting. Console popularity being a lot bigger here, and of course we kind of touched on this earlier, the lack of sponsors, which is, I think, by far the biggest. What are your thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, so I think I can really relate to this situation, because I think what people forget when they look at this stuff is, again, what's the return on investment for players? Like, NA got targeted here because in the last few months, there's been a lot of shuffling among these teams that aren't sponsored, right? And obviously the one that stands out is the one with Envy, Mike and Brax replacing 2 players in their team recently. But again, what incentive do these players, how to say, there's so much less incentive to really work things out and to try hard to grow as a team when you have there's no financial backbone. You don't have any sponsorships. You play these DPC events where there's qualifiers. If you bomb out of one qualifier, you feel like you just wasted 2 months because that's what you need to wait for the next tournament you can play in, probably. There's nothing else that's appealing. And the reason I can relate to this is that I think, NA was focused on a lot this time. If you look at the CIS scene, the reason people don't talk about it so much is that they're a bit less connected with the CIS scene. The CIS scene shuffles are insane. They're like 3 times as big as the NA ones.
Right.
Every team is shuffling every month, almost, except
every
VP.
team is shuffled, and that should be its song for sure.
Pretty much. Every team except the sponsored ones, what a coincidence, are shuffling a lot. Navi haven't been shuffling very much, if at all. VP have been stable for a long time. And of course, what's the factor that they share? Well, they have a stable salary, they have an organization that has structure behind it, and of course, in VP's case, they have massive success, which trumps everything. Like, if you're successful, that will make you able to see through a lot of things. Or sort out problems because it feels like it's worth it. But if you're one of these up-and-coming teams, you put these teams together, you play these qualifiers, you didn't make it, are you going to grind it out for another 2 months? Or are you going to look for the grass is greener on the other side kind of thing? And it happens in Europe too. The tier 2 scene in Europe is also very volatile. I can say it from my own teams. Like, I'm generally trying, with my teams to try to keep people together and keep them motivated. But if it doesn't go well in 1 or 2 instances, like, you have no contracts with each other. You don't owe each other anything, technically. So if somebody gets an opportunity somewhere else that seems better, you just jump on it because there's no repercussions, right?
Yep.
And I just think it's really unhealthy. And again, to me, it comes back to the structure. So yeah, you can talk about NA, and I think NA is a bit extreme just because on top of everything else that the scenes like share with financial aspect or whatever, on top of all of that, I think the NA talent pool is also smaller.
Yep.
So
there's a lot less NA players, period. That's
yes,
just always been the case.
There are just less good players that you can pick and choose from.
And that's because Dota is just less popular in NA.
And then when people shuffle, I think that's why the shuffles look so weird too, is that people that used to hate each other are playing together again, and then they leave each other, and then they play together again because they have to find good enough players, and then it's kind of a recipe for disaster, right? Like Envy and Gunner, for example, they play together in a team. Envy kicked Gunner. Fast forward 1 month, they play together in a team again. Envy kicks Gunner again. Like, I mean, clearly you needed this player to be in your team, but it also means if anything goes wrong, if there's some sort of conflict, you already have the seeds for a problem in place. So yeah, having
it's like a huge domino effect though, right? Because talk about the sponsors not having stable organization. Like EG is no offense to anybody else, EG is like the one stable organization for however long now. Less players, and all that snowballs into just having less patience to create a team. And there's more, not just less patience, but it's a combination of less patience and more pressure to be able to be that second team that everything's up for grabs.
Because there is nothing for not qualifying. That's the problem. I think the biggest root of the problem is how few people get to play and profit off this game.
Yeah.
You can compare it to, let's say, the classic thing that a lot of people like to bring up when you have this conversation is, yeah, but if you compare it to football and you look at second division players, they also have like a job next to it. They play largely for pleasure and for fun, but like, this analogy only goes so far because there is a really clear difference between nothing and something. Like, the people that play second division football, first of all, probably don't put as much time and effort into it as Dota players do. You don't have to justify and be like, well, that's your choice. You could just not do it, right? And yeah, you could. But we actually do a lot for the game. The tier 2 scene does stuff for the game. It creates content. It creates storylines. It keeps people interested. It, all these kind of things that it does. But they are rewarded 0. That is the biggest problem. And I don't think the comparison of saying tier 2 Dota players compared to a Division 2 football team is accurate either, because of the amount of relative players there are, right? Being a tier 2 Dota player, you are still, like, how do you say? Oh, this is hard to explain probably, but the difference between a tier 2 and a tier 1 Dota player in terms of raw skill and what they can pull off is, I would argue, smaller than the difference between a tier 2 footballer and a tier 1 footballer. So if you're in that position as a tier 2 player, the jump seems doable. You know what I mean?
I was going to
Like
say the
it's
difference
within.
between a tier 2 player and a tier 1 player is about $1 million.
Well, that's another thing. But it seems doable. You know, if you're a tier 2 football player and you're in your 30s or whatever, you're not aiming to, hell yeah, I'm going to play for Manchester United someday. Like, it didn't happen, okay? But if you're a tier 2 Dota player, where most of the players are in this range of, let's say they're between 18 and 25, maybe some of them are upward of 30, um, the difference between you and the top players is not that big. So the incentive to keep trying is that you feel like it's doable.
Right.
And then if you fail, you try again because you hear the stories and you see other people, right? Great example. Mad from OG didn't play for 2 years. He coached a good team instead. Suddenly he's playing a TI. Suddenly fucking wins TI. If that isn't motivating, then what is? You know, like you see these players that the community had written off. They were like, fucking Mad's never going to come back. He's a tier 2 player at best. He's been coaching these great players. He cannot fill the shoes of these other players. Well, guess what? He could. And there are lots of other examples of players going in and out of success. Like IX Mike, everybody wrote him off. Like, he's terrible. He's done. He cannot ever qualify. Suddenly he's playing a major from the NA region. So, you know, there are these success stories that keep people going. And that's what they're striving for. I just don't think it's healthy that it's this all or nothing thing, mentality, kind of. Like, either you make this major or this minor, or you just wasted, you know, you just wasted time, it feels like. And that's just sad.
Yeah. No,
I really
couldn't have
think
said it
there is
better.
somewhere in between this. Like, again, referring to CS, there are teams that don't make every major or every minor, but that can still go around because their brand has power. There's the players have value. There's other tournaments that they can play. Okay, you didn't make the major this time. Well, guess what? There are 3 IEMs you can play in the next 2 or 3 months. There are or ESL tournaments or other LANs that you can qualify for, where they invite the top teams and then you play qualifiers. But in Dota, you're playing against the best of the best every qualifier. So what are your chances? They're pretty low of making, like, who has made a major from Europe this year? Apart from Secret, Liquid, and Alliance made 1 or 2 in the start, I think. And apart from that, it's been like the top dogs every time. Secret, Liquid, NIP, OG. OG only made 1 now. They've been in a bad slump. But like, you know, the top of the field, 3 out of 4 teams that qualify, or 2 out of 3 teams that qualify has been the same every time. Like, it's more or less given. So there isn't much space to grow. I know this is a pretty, I don't want to call it a rant, but this is something that I obviously think and care a lot about.
Well, of course. No, yeah,
it's
makes sense.
very important to me. And I am hoping that there is a solution somewhere down the line. But the reason I'm not just posting a suggestion or a solution is that I don't have it, because I don't know the finances and the structure of organizations and what makes it profitable enough. Like, ideally we would want the orgs to step in and say, this is what we need from Dota to make it a game that we want to invest in. If they were heard? What if you actually heard the orgs out?
The problem is the players have always had 100% of the control in the conversation for the competitive scene. 100. So the way it used to be,
good.
Of course it's not. It's never good if one entity have 100% of the control, because beginning TI1 or pre-TI, it was the orgs having all the power. Players had none. That's how it was for esports in general for like 15 years. That's when I was technically a pro playing Counter-Strike. It was the same thing. Dota 2 comes out, suddenly completely flip-flops. And of course you have this mentality early on, especially the players. I can understand this perfectly. They've gotten screwed over by organizations time and time again. So they probably are still in this, like, these older players still have this mentality that organizations are evil and that players should have all the control. I understand why they think that, but they're incorrect. It should be more evenly distributed, and we're seeing kind of the effects years down the road now.
So you have managed an organization. If you were to get into Dota right now, let's put you in the shoes of, what should we say? Let's say you're from Envious, okay? Just a CS org or what's a good CS org? Let's say you're Astralis, okay? Let's make it a big name right now, a hot name. What do you think you would pitch in order to get into Dota? What would you want? If you're like, well, we thought about getting into Dota, but it wasn't very profitable because, and so this is what we need.
I'm in charge of Astralis in this scenario.
Yes. You're in charge of Astralis, and, well, not only that, but you have a direct line to Gaben. and you can now say, okay, we want to get into Dota.
So we're
really
assuming
we
we
have
want
money.
Okay. So number one, that would not be a good business business decision. Dota would not even be on my top 10 list of games to get in. Okay, top 10's a stretch. Top 5, it would not be on.
Then
there.
you're missing the point. Like
you
can make it. Yeah. You can make it number one now. But what does it take?
Well, I think more communication from Valve about the DPC system and changes that they're going to make it a little bit more organization friendly. Even though it doesn't directly affect me as a team organizer, but because of my experience, I know that these tournaments are not profitable. So I'd want that to change because that does affect the players and the teams in the long run. I think just having a healthy ecosystem for the entire year is very important. That would be the number one thing. In terms of big picture stuff to change, I don't know, actually. I mean, Astralis is EU, right? So we're not talking about the lack of sponsors necessarily that you find in NA. So EU should have better reach in terms of getting sponsors.
I mean, we could also take another org. We could take G2 if you want. Like
that's EU
if that
as well,
changes
though,
anything,
right?
Okay, well, if you want an NA org that's not in Dota,
no, that's fine. It was more. I'm just thinking. It was
just
to
give an example. Like it doesn't really matter who it is.
I don't have an answer that comes to me right away, other than the communication and the changes to make it a little bit more even ecosystem all around.
Do you think the way DPC events are run in terms of sponsorships that tournaments can take is too strict? Like, for example, I believe no DPC events can have a title sponsor. I think that's one of the limitations. You cannot call your major, you cannot call it...
Right.
You know, the Dream League major is called the Dream League major. They can't call it the Corsair major, which the sponsor fucking love that stuff, right? Like, their name is literally the name of the tournament. That has value.
They'll pay a shit ton, yeah.
Yes, that is value for them. It's crazy value, but they're not allowed to. Mm-hmm. So that definitely stifles the amount of money that can come in, right? Do you think that's too strict? Do you think that would make a big difference? If Valve just said, you know what, guys, we're going to fund half the prize pool. You guys do all the organizing of these DPC events. We can approve or not approve of your tournament for whatever reason. But if you are selected, you can choose your sponsors as long as X. Like, what do you think the limitation should be? What should not be allowed, in your opinion? Like,
oh, boy.
Is there any limitation to betting sponsors? Do you think that's
what I was
going to
bring up. In my personal experience... I'm biased though because I've been a tournament organizer. I know the personality side of things. I know the team side of things. I kind of know like the full 360 other than the Valve entity, I suppose. I think there should be betting. I think the problem with Dota right now is that sponsors are hard to find. But guess what sponsor is not hard to find, even in NA, is betting. If we had betting sponsor for Captain's Draft, I actually would have not lost 100K or whatever the hell I lost. Like... I would have made my money back.
Sponsors were not allowed at all for any DPC event, correct?
Right. Which I mean, I can understand why that is. Like, it's not like that falls on deaf ears or whatever. I understand why they did it, but the problem is tournaments are not profitable. So you can maybe like have a slow transition where you allow more sponsors and the title sponsor, like you're talking about. That definitely helps. I don't think that really flips it on its head. It doesn't do a 180. Because like a title sponsor is, depending on obviously the tournament size, 50 to 100K at, like, that's stretching it probably to get a title sponsor. Like
for
it's just
major,
one for a major. Say like, well, let's say they already have a sponsorship, they're giving like 100 or 150K to add the title sponsor on top. 100K is probably like the additional money you'll get. So I don't know if that makes or breaks tournaments by any means. It definitely helps, but if we're talking about betting,
let's say it's not a DPC tournament, right?
Right. I mean, that's why we see
they are allowed, right?
Exactly. That's why we're seeing ESL do only non-DPC tournaments because those are actually profitable. Like they're not,
but they can't do enough of them to get orgs invested into Dota because the DPC trumps everything.
Yes,
more or less. Like there's very few non-DPC tournaments throughout the year that are at a big enough magnitude to get recognition for sponsors to get a return on investment on having teams.
Yeah, no, that's true.
That's what you think.
Yep.
Okay.
We should move on.
Sure.
That was a good.
I think this is
good talk, though.
Honestly, this is one of the most important things to talk about in Dota right now, though, because I think that is the future of the game. Like the competitive scene, I think something needs to change, and we obviously have a voice, and we can, at least inspire or think about it ourselves, and maybe make a difference.
And here's the thing: like we talked about how Valve is not dumb, community is not dumb. many people in the community have been seeing this coming for a long time, and I know Valve probably knows that at some point it's going to get to a point of no return, if you will. The question is, what is that point, right? When the community, it's more about, I think, the community kind of vocalizing, because there's been rumblings here and there, and people have brought it up time and time again, but it's not preventing players from playing in tournaments, like, or at least not to a high enough degree for the community to be outraged or anything like that, right? It's just, I'm wondering, like, at what point does it become something you can't ignore anymore? You know?
Okay, actually, I have one more thing I just want to add quickly and get your opinion on. CSGO just flat out has higher viewership than Dota.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to watch, it's easier to understand for casual players, and it's something you can very quickly introduce and explain to other people so they can enjoy it with you. How big a part do you think that plays in the number of orgs and sponsors that are invested into the game?
Huge.
Do you think that's because how big? Let's say a Dota major, right? The finals of a Dota major. How many viewers does that pull on the international stream? Let's say 100 to 200K, right? Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah. Something.
I think CS:GO pulls 500,000 on their major finals. The way I remember it, I've seen
they've hit 1 million before, but that was when they had like the betting bot crate thingies.
True. Yeah. So, but like. Okay, let's say after that, I think the last major, maybe it had more than 500,000. Maybe it was 600K or something.
It's a lot.
I don't remember exactly, but it's much higher. Dota has those numbers at TI, but only at TI. So do you think if TI was still the biggest tournament of the year, still a massive event and huge, and you took, let's just say everything else was the same, but you just took the prize money and spread it throughout tournaments throughout the year, do you think that would increase the viewership by a similar amount? Like, I'm not saying we're going to get CSGO's numbers, because we're not. But if TI had these 600,000 viewers or whatever concurrent, and you took half the prize pool of that, and you spread it out throughout the majors, how much do you think that drives viewership? If a tournament's $3 million instead of $1 million, do you think it makes a difference? Do you think it makes a difference if it's 100K instead of 250? Or... like, where do you put the money to get more viewers on events so that sponsors are more interested, like they are in CSGO, because their events have big viewership?
I mean, the money
is it just the game?
Difference.
Is it not about the money? Is it just because the game is easier to watch? What do you think?
I would say 90% of it is the game is easier to watch. 10%.
Okay. Can you do anything about that in Dota?
I mean, we talked about
make it easier to watch?
At this point, no, I don't think so. You can educate people a little bit better on what the game is, like the mechanics of the game. Valve
obviously tried it at TI, right, with the newbie stream.
Yeah, and I thought, I mean, I don't want to get into this, but I thought that the one I was doing was kind of like the first time they're trying it, and it was a success in terms of, you know, the feedback and whatnot. But I think they could have taken that to the next level, because the next year I feel like it was almost an afterthought. They just like, all right, we might as well just do this again. You can actually make that a whole production. Like, that was the only TI I was invited to. I wasn't even on camera the entire time. Like, it was literally just, we were casting in a dark room in the far corner of the arena. You couldn't even see like almost anything out the window. I feel like that could definitely be taken to the next level.
Do you think you could draw a lot more viewers in with that beginner stream instead of the big one?
I mean, that's the question, right? You could, it depends on what you mean by a lot. If we're talking CS numbers in terms of both streams together, absolutely not. Dota's never catching CS in viewership. It's not happening. It's just the structure of the game.
So do you think? Okay, now like let's try to finish. Do you think there's any how to say? All of the stuff we talked about before, with how the money is being distributed, how there's not that many sponsors involved and everything. Do you think that we can? Like, are we just at the limitation of how hard the game is to get into in that aspect? And we just rely 100% on the community to fund the game because they are the ones that understand. So they are the ones that can invest into the game because they're able to watch it. They're able to enjoy it. Whereas sponsors will not be able to, you know, how to say, put as much money into it because they don't see the same return on investment as they do in other games. Like, we're kind of back to where we started in a way in that sense. Like, is it just unrealistic what you and I are imagining, that we can get new sponsors in and orgs again? Is it just the game that is like this and we need the community to fund us?
It's not black and white, but no, I understand what you're saying, and that it's a huge limitation for sure. That's all I'll say. We're not going to turn this around. It's not going to be it's not going to be bigger than League ever. This literally will never happen, right? Unless Riot is actually shut down for all the crap that's going on at that company. That's a different story.
So, in conclusion, we think the absolute best solution that can be done right now, or at least in the coming year, is to spread prize money across the year. That's the best solution we see right now. And then the community still funds it, and they get a return on investment through Battle Pass, giving them rewards or encouraging them to log in and play, which is also something like
it is. It definitely is.
I think
that's a year-round thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, if the Battle Pass was a whole year thing instead of just a TI, but does it diminish its value then? Do
they
people
did that before, though. That's the thing. Yeah, they did
that
that before, and obviously they don't want to do it again.
Yeah,
for whatever reason. So they have the data, we don't. So all right, let's move on. Speaking of the Battle Pass, it's coming out today. By the time you guys watch or listen to this, it might already be out. We won't talk too much about this, but because I'll be making a video and posting it. But are you expecting anything? Is there anything crazy that you want to predict, perhaps?
Honestly, I think one of the really interesting one of the interesting things about the Battle Pass is that there's always something new and you have no idea what it is. They haven't teased anything. They haven't said anything about what's going to be implemented. But one thing I will almost guarantee is that there will be one or two completely new things that they haven't done before. Because they do that every year, right? Like the core gets recycled or, improved or whatever. But there's always something new. We've had like Siltbreaker. We've had, was it Underhollow? Was that one of the TI Battle Pass things? I think it was, right?
Yep.
And there's been like other implementations of like mini games or other things in the compendium, double down for ranked, all these kind of things. At some point you would imagine you run out of ideas, but if they invest time and effort and resources into it, the game is so deep. Again, like when you have this complex of a game, you can do so much, right?
Right.
You can do so many things. So, largely I'm expecting similar to last year, and then what I'm really interested in is what is the new stuff.
So
because I like the old stuff too. I just hope we get something new.
Remember, I had a prediction episode 1 about. Well, we'll get into this in a second. That was one of them. But I was also thinking about this Battle Pass, and you're right. The Underhollow, whatever it was called, it was literally just like a game.
Yeah.
So I think one of two things will happen potentially. Number one is less likely and probably less impactful. So is the first thing that popped in my head is something VR related. Would be kind of cool if it was integrated in the game.
This Battle Pass?
Yeah, especially considering you have, which we'll talk about in the next segment real quick, is Valve Index, which obviously is not out yet, but you could potentially start getting people a little bit more interested in that as a result of some VR in-game. I have no idea. The other thing, which we talked about episode 1, I believe, Valve Auto Chess just coming out with their own fucking version. Fuck the mod. Those guys sold out to the Chinese. Just come out with your own auto. You don't have to do the item system. You can actually make it a better game. Like, how awesome.
Yeah.
The question is, though, and this is the thing that was in my head, would the community be mad about that? That's the thing I can't predict. Would they be mad if they just came out with their own auto chess? What do you think?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, it's always hard when you say what will the community think. Like, it's not one entity, right? But when we say will the community be mad, are we talking about what the majority reception will be on Reddit, or what the player
Reddit
numbers
is
will
the
be?
Community, right?
It's a representation of part of the community, but it's the best one we have because it's very vocal, very active, and there's a lot of people in there. But it's very clear that Reddit definitely scales toward the more invested people in the game than the others. Like, the more invested, the more time you put into it, the more effort, the more you care about the game, the more likely you are to go on a forum that discusses it. It's the same with a show or whatever. Like, if you're a big fan of Game of Thrones, there's a good chance you will be active in a subreddit or a fan forum or whatever. If you just watch and you're like, okay, this is a good show, I'm going to go back and do whatever, you're not going to do it. So it is skewed.
The thing that
Reddit is clearly above average in terms of investment for people.
But
so
the thing,
will the casual players that don't really watch that care? Maybe not.
That's the thing I was going to bring up. Like, the thing about auto chess, the first thing I thought of was actually the Dota players wouldn't really, they wouldn't probably have a very positive reaction to an auto chess by Valve, just because they wouldn't care. It would be like neutral at best, especially if it's combined with the Battle Pass. But I was thinking more, the people that actually like Dota Auto Chess, which I still like it, even though I'm frustrated about a few of the mechanics. A lot of people are from outside of Dota. They wouldn't be buying the Battle Pass anyway. So it makes even more sense to do it. And the reason I brought this up on the original episode, if you guys didn't watch that one, the reason that I have this crazy theory is because we talked about how Drodo Studios, obviously they sold out to the Chinese developer. They have a mobile version. And we were wondering, why didn't Valve get involved? Right? Like, there's no way they don't want to get involved. But now that they sold out, maybe they opened the door to just do their own shit. Like, why not? I'd be fully into it, probably.
It's crazy to think that at one point, I think about 1/3 of the players in the game were playing auto chess. I think it was something like that.
It was insane.
Or maybe it was even close to half or something like that. There were so many people playing that game when it was on the wave up. There is no way Valve did not look at that as a huge opportunity. So since it didn't happen, either the bid from China was extreme compared to Valve. Like, obviously, if you're Drodo Studios, you want to make money, right? You came up with a cool idea.
Right.
It's clearly very profitable. There is so much money in China in these mobile games. And maybe Valve didn't think it was worth it. That's one option. Or like you said, the other one is, well, Valve were like, okay, how much will this cost us? Drodo Studios set a price, and Valve didn't say this isn't worth it. They just said, okay, we will make our own version. This is our game, and our implementation of it, we will make our own for a battle pass or something. Because there is no way they look at those numbers and feel like they shouldn't care. I mean, it's one thing if you make a custom game that has 10,000 people playing it, right? Like, that's nice. But this was fucking 300,000 people on at once playing auto chess. It was insane.
Absurd.
It was literally a successful title on its own. Like, if that game was released for $10, the people who made it would have been super happy with the price.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
So yeah.
I think the other thing, I'm
with you. There is no way. There's actually just no way that this game didn't have an influence. That there must be something that Valve were doing with it. And either the Chinese outbid them, or Valve are doing something based on this auto chess, because they could clearly see that the demand was there. So
the only thing I was questioning is whether people would be mad that they're making a game that's already a game. But then I thought about the whole, you're sold out to the Chinese anyway. I don't think and at least the Western audience probably would not care, honestly. But the other scenario that could be true, which I am even more hopeful for, artifact expansion in the battle pass. Woo! No, it's not happening.
That sounds, I'm going to give that one a unlikely stamp from here.
I could not tell you how happy I would be if somehow that was true. I'm 99% sure that's not going to happen. I know.
But I'm really curious what they're going to do with Artifact, though. I'm actually curious. Like, how do you bring that game back? But we talked about that last episode.
Yes,
I'm still curious.
We can have a new segment called What Happened to Artifact, and we just talk about it literally every episode. All right, so the last real segment before we get to maybe a couple community questions, depending on what time we're at. Actually, we're getting close. I want to quickly talk about the Valve Index. It was obviously announced a month ago, I want to say, and the details finally came out the other day. So Valve obviously was a big part in coming out with the HTC Vive. This is their own hardware, though. They're coming out with their own thing. It is $1,000. The headset's $500, the controller's $280, two base stations $150. Ships, if you pre-order now, August 31st, the last time I checked. System requirements, a GTX 970. Seems like quite a bit. Okay. And the reason for that's pretty high. Is it has dual LCDs, which are 1440 by 1600 in res. That's two of those. And the hertz rate.
Are they part of the base stations?
No, that's in the. What do you mean? The LCDs are in
it's part of the VR kit. So when it says VR kit, the monitors are included.
Yeah, when I say monitor, it's literally the thing you're looking into in the.
Well, I know what a monitor is.
Just
but
so
you can imagine, you could buy a VR kit where you use your own monitors, but this comes with two screens. It's not you need these two screens for it to work.
Correct. Right? Well, I didn't realize you were such a noob at VR. I thought I was a noob at VR. Good lord.
Oh man, I've done very little. My VR experience has literally been trying it twice at Valve or something. Okay. That's all I've done with it. So very little knowledge.
Apparently the normal hertz for I think the HTC Vive and pretty much every other VR is 90, which was surprising to me because I figured people would get motion sick. This one goes up to 144 hertz. So some of the reviews that were done, they're like basically said that this is pretty much the highest quality VR thing or VR set you can get. And the only problem was it is $1,000. What would you buy this? Obviously, you need to maybe see some more, but would you think about buying that?
With my knowledge, again, which is limited, but what I've heard and what I've seen from VR right now, I think it's something I would want to buy if the games are good enough. Like, to me, it's not the technology itself. It is, will this be entertaining to me in something I cannot get in PC games? Like, because the technology is amazing, and the stuff that I tried at Valve was super impressive, and really, it was something you could feel that this was something else. But then when I see the games that are available and implemented right now, they leave a lot to be desired, because obviously the things you try are like cool demos, but you need to make a full gameplay experience of that. And if their demos are like 2 minutes and it took them months to make, there's a big step to having a fully fledged out game that you can play for 10, 20, 30, 40 hours and have a cool experience the whole way through, like an RPG or whatever you could make in theory. I think the theory of this technology is amazing, and I think it will be the next thing in gaming. I just don't know if like time is a constraint on this, as it is with everything else. All technologies, like flat screens, I think were largely functional and made in the
awful.
80s.
They were awful.
But it takes some time before it becomes, mass produced, available to the general public, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I look at something like this, I'm like, $1,000. First of all, it's pretty expensive for a lot of people. If you live in a rich Western country, it's something you can invest into. It's kind of the same as buying half a computer for me. But again, what are the games? That's what I want to see. Like, do I feel like this is worth buying half a computer for?
That's the question. So I was, before this was the price was announced, I was like, I'm definitely going to buy this, because it just, like, you and I both, I think, tried at the same time. The HTC Vive beat like 6 months or a year before it was actually released at Valve headquarters. Yeah. And I was blown away how cool it was. But at the same time, in the back of my head, with any new technology, especially since that was their first foray into this general market, I almost never go for first generation, because there's always something, right? So I'm like, second generation, I think I'll go for it. Then I saw it was $1,000, and I'm like, wow, I was not expecting it to be that much. But you're right. It just comes down to what the games are. And this is the interesting thing. So obviously you have some of the cool games. I'm forgetting some of the names, but like Beat Saber is a very popular one. There's a few games that are actually pretty popular that are really nice.
That game looks really fun.
That's
really
my kind of game. So I think there was an announcement. I forget what site I was reading it. This was before they even announced everything, but that there would be 3 flagship games by Valve coming out with this system. They just haven't been announced yet. And I was thinking, and one of the demos, by the way, was in Portal, the Portal universe. So at first I was thinking they could do a Portal VR, but at the same time, that is probably quite, what's the word? It's not that it would be difficult to, it would make you queasy. I think it would make a lot of people queasy, right? You'd get switching planes
from playing.
It would be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like, what do you mean? Does queasy mean you get like dizzy or sick or something?
Yeah.
Or does it mean something? Yeah, I definitely think.
I think that is a
limitation of the technology. I definitely think that's a problem that you need to figure out.
What if
you can get motion sick from the shit really easily?
So that's the thing. That's the one thing I mentioned about the hertz, though, and the reason the system requirements are so high because of the hertz, because you need to match that FPS. People don't get as queasy or at all even on this one because it's 144 hertz versus 90. This is the only one right now.
Wait, so having higher frame rate makes you less motion sick?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's smoother. Now, if somebody gets queasy going on a roller coaster, obviously the motion has a lot to do with it. But if you're just gonna get motion sick looking somewhere, then you're gonna get motion sick, right? 144 hertz, it's closer to what you are seeing in real life, to where you can't distinguish. I'm not gonna get technical because I don't know the technical aspects.
No, but I'm just not. Maybe I'm just being stupid here. I'm just not sure that that's true. Like, the higher frame rate it is, that the less motion sick you would get.
You have screens literally in your eye, like right here. You think if you have 90 FPS versus 144, like 90 is probably fine, but 144 makes sure that it is super smooth if you can hit that FPS. But anyway, that's not the important aspect. We shouldn't get hung up on this.
All right.
The thing that I want to make a bold prediction, syndereN.
Okay, go.
What flag? Okay. Look at it from Valve's perspective here, okay? This is bold prediction number 2 of the episode.
Okay.
They've been working on this for quite a while.
Yeah.
Valve Index. This is their first major hardware release ever. Steam controller was a hardware release. The HTC Vive was the was HTC's hardware, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
What game do you think people would want to buy no matter what? Like, if you want to make sure that your first real hardware that you've spent this much time on is successful, what game?
So out of games that Valve already owns.
Yes. And this is obvious. This is my bold prediction.
Okay.
What game will they release? Are you actually are you serious?
Give me your prediction.
Well, you're supposed to guess, and it should be obvious.
You said it's a bold prediction. Then it should be easy to. Then it's not easy to guess.
But it's
If
a
it's
bold
so
prediction
obvious,
because
then-
there's Half-Life 3.
Like, what do you mean?
Half-Life
prediction is something
3.
that's unlikely.
That is unlikely.
Okay.
What do you mean? How? That's the most unlikely thing in Valve's. Oh,
Then
what are you
why is it
talking
so
about?
obvious? Okay, I think we disagree on what a bold prediction is. If you make a bold prediction, it's something that is unlikely to happen, but you just said it's the most
Yes.
obvious. Then you mean it's likely.
It's the most obvious bold prediction.
Okay, gotcha. That's what you meant.
All right. You ruined the
Okay.
whole segment. All right.
Right.
So, do you think
We
that's
can go back.
possible?
Okay, rewind. Do the segment again.
Half-Life 3. What's your reaction?
Yes. I've never played the games.
All right, we're moving on. This discussion's over. Holy shit.
Actually, I did play like 10 minutes of Half-Life.
Oh my god, dude. This is what got me into PC gaming. I was playing Quake 2 a little casually, then Half-Life came out. It looked kind of meh when I was looking at the box in the store, because back then, ladies and gentlemen, you had to go to fucking stores to buy games. Steam wasn't even released yet. It looked kind of
Half-Life
meh, but
got you into PC games? You played
my
CS.
friend made me. Oh my god, I am about to have an aneurysm. Let me just tell you why you're so wrong about this.
I know CS
Half-
is a Half-Life mod. It's a Half-Life mod. Don't.
All
Okay,
right.
relax.
So I bought Half-Life because my friend made me, and I fell in love. That is where I was a beast. I was 14 years old, or however old I was.
But that was your first computer game, was Half-Life.
No,
Really?
it's the first one I
You
got
said it's what
super
got you
into.
into PC gaming. Oh, okay.
Yeah. God, you're a terrible listener. I feel bad for your girlfriend right now.
Did
You
you
know
not?
that?
Did you not play Diablo, for example? Like, when did these games come out relative to each other? Shit, I don't even remember.
Actually, that's true. When
Half-Life
it's-
was.
I didn't play. I played Brood War. When did Brood War come out? So Brood War was
Half-Life
98.
came
I
out
want
in
to say.
1998. November 98 was Half-Life release.
And I think StarCraft was the
StarCraft
same-ish.
release.
I want to say.
StarCraft was March 1998, so that's half a year earlier.
Okay, I didn't play the original Star. I played Brood War when the expansion came out, so that was later.
Diablo came out in 96, the day before New Year.
All right, this conversation's over. You've disappointed me on a level I can't
Wait,
even explain.
No, but okay, listen. The thing that's surprising to me is that you're older than me, okay? You're older
Yeah.
than me, and I always had this impression that you've played computer games your whole life, but your entry like into actually playing computer games a lot was a game that came out later than when I started. That's why I'm surprised.
Oh, okay.
Because the first PC games I really fell in love with were Diablo and Civilization 2 and Command & Conquer. And they're all from, I think,
So-
96. So that just surprised me. I thought maybe you'd played those games at
I
least
was a big
before.
console gamer
you're-
as a kid.
okay, you're
Huge console
American.
gamer, like regular
American, so you
Nintendo,
played
Super
consoles.
Nintendo, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
gotcha.
And we didn't have a computer. We literally didn't have. Like, I would go to my friend's house. We played Red Alert, like you said, Civilization. I didn't have a computer to play those games on. We
Gotcha,
got a
okay.
computer basically the same time Quake 2 was ending its reign, if you will, in 98.
Oh, when was
That's
that?
when I started playing Quake 2 quite a bit. Then my first FPS real. Like, I'd played fucking Wolfenstein back in the day, but that game was garbage. You know, I never liked it. Doom as well. But, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, let's move
I
on.
mean,
Sarah.
sure, yeah. Why are you so disappointed? I don't understand.
I don't know.
What are you so disappointed in?
All right, so let's finish up with this segment here. I want to do this. What? Excuse me?
I'm like, why are you disappointed? And then you sound disappointed that I asked.
I'm just disappointed in everything.
Okay.
So this last segment we're going to end on, I want to do this every now and then. I don't have a name for it, so if you guys have any suggestions, let us know. Basically, I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to ask me, it's going to be the same question, and we rate ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, and then the
Okay.
opposing person writes down their number for that person. All right, my explanation is terrible. Let's just do this, and you'll see.
Yeah, I was like,
If
what's
you're-
happening? I don't
If you're listening
Okay.
on audio, don't worry. The reason we're writing it down is just to make sure nobody is cheating, right? They feel bad or anything like that. So
Okay.
I want you to get
Explain
out a
it
piece
again,
of paper.
please.
I want
I
you
got
to rate from 1 to 10 what you
Yeah.
think my ego is.
Your ego. So we're
Right.
rating the other person.
Right, and I'm rating your ego. So let me just
Gotcha.
explain real quick. Obviously, 1 means you have 0 ego. 10 means you're egomaniac. I want to compare it to the peers in your profession. So not like an average person. I want you to tell me how egotistical you are versus...
You are.
Or me, yes, me.
Yes.
For people in my general profession, my peers.
Within okay, yeah. Gotcha.
And for me, it's basically like players for you, right? So 1 to 10, okay?
Okay.
5 is obviously average, 10 egomaniac. My handwriting is terrible. I will redo this.
You're writing a number.
I know. You'll see how bad my handwriting. I'm actually embarrassed. I'm redoing.
Are you struggling to write a number so I can read it or what?
All right, there we go. So again, if you're listening on audio, it's not a big deal. So, are you done?
Yes.
All right, let's do you first. So, I want you to tell me.
It?
Not yet. No, this.
Okay.
Hold on.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hold on. Just chill.
Okay. All right.
All right. I want you to tell me what you think your ego level is. 1 to 10.
Okay. What I think or what I think you thought?
No, what you think you are.
Okay. Give me a
Very
sec.
different.
This is actually pretty hard when you need to think about the whole scene and stuff.
Yes.
5.
You think you're so fucking stupid. You think you're a 5.
Yeah.
You think you're average ego in the professional scene.
Among competitive Dota players.
Okay. You want me to show you what I thought you were?
You probably wrote 1 or 2.
2.
Okay.
You're an idiot if you think you're a 5. Holy shit. Now I'm scared what you put for me.
Nah, because what I was thinking was maybe 5 is too high. Actually,
Yeah,
on second
5 is
thought, I
way
would say
too
4.
high.
I would say 4, I think.
You're
But I
a
would
3.
not say 2.
At most, you're a 3. At most. There's no way. Have you met these players that you're talking about? Come on, dude. They're like all 9s and 8s and 10s. Jesus.
Well, they can't all be 9, 8s, and 10s. Then
They're
5
all
is
of them.
really low. Then 5 is super low.
All right.
What are you talking about?
Just shut your mouth, all right? That was
Okay, I have a different.
exaggerating.
Okay, I actually, before I give you my number, I have a question for you. So if I'm not a 5, name me a 5.
A 5?
Yeah, name me
A
a 5
person.
in Dota. Yeah, name me
Now
someone
you're
who's a
putting me
5.
on a spot, man. I don't.
No, but you're saying everyone is 8, 9,
All
and
right.
10. So who's a 5 then?
5
if I'm a 2,
is-
there has to be somewhere in between, right?
I'd say AUI is a 5.
Okay.
That's a pretty
What
good
makes
choice,
him
actually.
a lot more egotistical than me? What's
He's
the
just-
difference?
No, I think 5 is the best place to be. It's a normal ego level. That's where you want to be. You're too low. You're way too low.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
All right. Are you ready for mine?
Yeah.
So, what
I
do
still
I
don't
think?
understand why we have to show this.
Well, because it's to make sure nobody's cheating. Like, I don't want you to change it. Just let me do what I want to do. Why do you have to question everything in
Why
life?
wouldn't you just trust me? Like, why do I
No,
have
it's
to
not
show it to
I know
you?
I trust you.
Oh,
It's
that is
more
true.
about
That
the
is indeed a
viewers.
two when
It's
I
more
see
about
it.
the viewers trusting you. Okay? They don't
Okay,
trust you like I
understood.
do.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So, what do I think my ego is from 1 to 10?
Oh, I need
amongst-
to show it first, right?
No. I say mine first, and then you show me what you think. Now, I'm very scared about this because
Didn't we just do it the other way around?
no, we did not. I showed mine after you said.
Okay.
God, forgot syndereN. Are you having a stroke? Jesus.
Help.
All right, I'm actually scared to answer this now because I'm going to look super egotistical thinking I'm not egotistical. Does that make sense? I
so
think,
what do you say?
I genuinely think that I'm a 4.
Ta-da!
Oh, okay. 5.
That was pretty
Not
close.
bad. Yeah, that's
Good.
pretty good. Nice,
job.
safe choice. Thank you,
I
syndereN.
quickly just scribbled that down after you said 4. I write really quickly.
Cheater. All right, cool. So that is a new segment that we're going to do. syndereN really butchered it this time. It'll be better next time, I promise. You can give us
Why?
suggestions on what
Dude, you're making it sound like I ruined like every segment this episode.
you guys can give us some
Dude, I was
suggestions on what to rate.
I was sick and I showed up for this, and all I get is shit.
So yeah, that is the end of the episode. Quick announcement, not that people really care that are listening, but Chip, the community hero and item project, will be coming back. We're putting in a shit ton more heroes. I'm super excited. Been working a lot on that lately. syndereN's hero is not amongst them, by the way. That one is
True.
way in the backlog right now. But there is a hero.
For a while.
There is a hero coming out that I will not mention yet, but it involves 3 heads. Okay.
Oh dear.
Voice number one will be me. Voice number 2 will be Slacks. Voice number 3 will be syndereN, whether he likes it or not.
Wait, what? Okay.
Voice number 3 is syndereN. So look forward to that. Other than that, I guess we can quickly answer this if you want. Caffeinated Savage asks, will you be having guests in the future?
Do you want to answer, or am I supposed to answer this one?
I mean, I said you should answer. Go ahead. You give your answer and I'll give mine.
Wait, hang on. I'm just busy ruining this segment. Just give me a moment. Okay. Am I done now? Did I ruin it?
Yeah, it's already ruined. Yes.
Okay, cool. Yes, we will, but not in the next few episodes, at least. But we have talked about it, and we do. I think what we will do, we didn't discuss it in very much detail, but the way I at least interpreted it, that I think we're on the same page, is that it makes sense to get guests if there's something good for them to talk about, like if they're an expert in the field or the topic just fits what you want to hear from them, right? So we're not just randomly getting a guest like, hey, let's just get this guy on. We want to get them on because we will talk about something that they care about or have a very, like, a relevant opinion on. For example, if we were to make a segment on the tier 2 scene, it would make a lot more sense to get a tier 2 player to talk about it than to get Kuroki, you know? That's my opinion, at least. That's,
no, I agree.
That's the thing about guests, but not yet. For now, it's just the two of us ruining everything. So
no, you're ruining
or me.
Everything. Yeah, I would say
you're doing really great.
If I had
I'm so sorry. Honestly, I'm so sorry. I've really not been performing today.
It's okay. It's the headache.
My 5 ego keeps me from admitting it. So.
Good. All right. With that, well, I was gonna say that if I had a number in mind of how many times we have a guest, how often, it would be every couple months. So like 1 out of every 8 episodes or so. Just a random number. We're not gonna.
Okay.
If it makes sense, it makes sense. All right.
Just like
thanks for watching.
5 was also a random number. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Ego 5 versus the what did I give you? Ego 2. Whether he likes it or not, he is a fucking Ego 2. Until next time, guys. And remember, you can look forward to a future segment on how many times do you wash your hands a day. Till next time, SUNSfan and syndereN signing out. Goodbye.
You want to sponsor that?